In the early 16th century, Central Asian tribesmen burst through the Khyber Pass, bent on forging a new empire in a new land. Led by Babur, the blood of both the great Mongol warlord Chinggis Khan and later Turkic conqueror Tamerlane flowed through their veins. Their descendants would seize almost all of the Indian subcontinent and rule it for some 3 centuries, leaving their mark in many cities like Lahore, Delhi and Hyderabad. There they built such monuments as the Jama Mosque, the Taj Mahal, the Red Fort and Fatehpur Sikri. For those early invaders, however, India was a land full of danger. It was a country where the vast majority of the population spoke not their language nor followed their religion, and where there were more princes than kingdoms to content them. India was a land of Hindus and Muslims, Buddhists and Jains, mystics and mercenaries, harems and holy men, rajas and mighty rivers, mountains, jungles, swamps and plains, where animals that walked, hopped, crawled, slithered and flew were all alien to them. Despite the dangers, the Mughals were able to forge an empire largely thanks to the work of one man, whose influence was so great that he is commonly known by his Arabic nickname Akbar. He was the 3rd emperor, son of Humayun and grandson of Babur. His grandfather had ruled for just 4 years before dying an early death at 47. Humayun was forced to give up his Indian kingdom when the Afghans invaded from the north, but by 1555 his Mughals had recaptured it, although he would die within a year of his victory. It was his son Akbar who would ensure that his descendants remained more securely on the throne for another 300 years. The 3rd Mughal emperor applied 3 main methods for consolidating his control over North India: integration, intimidation, and administration. Let's first take a look at integration. The Mughals were not the first Muslims to enter the subcontinent, themselves having wrested power from the Islamic Sultanate of Delhi. These early Muslims, as Islamic conquerors had done across the Middle East, North Africa and parts of Europe, often discriminated against the non-Muslim or dhimmi population of the conquered. One such measure was the jizya tax that non-Muslims were forced to pay, the failure to do so sometimes resulting in entire families being sold into slavery. Before Akbar, the Mughals had been focused more on their Central Asian homeland, with aspirations to conquer the lands held by their ancestors Chinggis Khan and Tamerlane centuries before. But with Akbar, a not yet seen period of expansion began that set North India ablaze and resulted in the empire tripling in size in his almost 5-decade-long reign. The important cities of Delhi and Agra would become Mughal capitals and are home to some of the most iconic Indo-Islamic architecture in India. In the new areas he conquered, Akbar scrapped the jizya tax and the restrictions placed on Hindus forbidding the building of new temples, even commissioning several from his own pocket. He was fascinated by philosophy, religion and theology, slowly becoming more disenfranchised with the orthodoxy of Sunni Islam. He built a centre for theological debate called the Ibadat Khana. In 1582, Akbar went a step further by founding his own cult-like religion called the Din-e-Ilahi, fusing the best aspects of his new empire's religions in the Muslim, Hindu, Jain, Sikh, Zoroastrian and even Catholic doctrines. Another way Akbar integrated into broader Indian society was through his treatment of the traditional Hindu Rajput families, many of whom were allowed to keep their lands as long as they recognized him as their overlord. One such Rajput ruler was Raja Bihari Mal, who was the king of a small, beleaguered kingdom called Amber, which is today better known as Jaipur. By offering the hand of his daughter, Hurka Bai, to the young emperor, the protection of the feared imperial soldiers would greatly bolster his position and standing among the surrounding Rajputs. In 1562, Akbar and Hurka Bai, who became known as Jodha Bai, were married and 7 years later produced an heir who would go on to succeed Akbar, ruling as Jahangir. At the time of his marriage to his first Rajput bride, Akbar already had 2 wives. Following the Central Asian tradition of his family, he had married his first cousin, whom he married at the age of 9, as well as the widow of his regent Bairam Khan. Muslim rulers had married Hindu princesses before, but Akbar's Rajput brides were somewhat of an innovation, as he did not force them to convert to Islam, rather allowing a following of Hinduism among those in the harem who wished to practice it. Akbar would go on to marry around a dozen more Hindu Rajput brides, as well as many Sunni Muslim ones. Marrying a daughter off to a Mughal royalty provided many boons for Rajput rulers. Their brothers often were given high-up roles, either in administration or the military, and while the sons of Hindu queens were raised as Muslim, they were counted as legitimate heirs to the throne. Let's now take a look at intimidation. A description of Akbar by a Catalan Jesuit, Antoni de Montserrat, reads as following. One could easily recognize, even at first glance, that he is king. He has broad shoulders, somewhat baldy legs, well suited for horsemanship, and a light brown complexion. He carries his head bent towards the right shoulder. His forehead is broad and open, his eyes so bright and flashing that they seem like a sea shimmering in the sunlight. Just 6 years into his reign, Akbar faced serious opposition close to home when his foster brother and successful general Adam Khan attempted a coup after walking into the royal quarters with a bloody scimitar, waking the sleeping emperor and tussling with him until the latter dealt the upstart rebel such a blow that he flew a somersault and then fell unconscious. With his life no longer in danger and the offender in custody, Akbar had to set an example and had his disgraced foster brother dragged up the palace steps by his hair and thrown down from the ramparts, which almost killed him, although upon the emperor's express orders, the second time his guards threw him over, they ensured it was head first, which finished the job. On the battlefield, Akbar was a force to be reckoned with, pioneering Mughal usage of firearms, especially early matchlocks procured from both the Ottomans and European traders, which put his troops head and shoulders above their Indian adversaries. His huge artillery train succeeded in reducing fort after fort to rubble, capturing the previously thought to be impregnable Chittor fort in Rajasthan without too much of a fight. To consolidate his new gains, he also built defensive structures, like the ever-impressive Red Fort in his capital of Agra, as well as entrusting the construction of a large fort at Amber to his general Man Singh. Perhaps his most memorable military innovation, it was his use of war elephants in battle. It's believed that Akbar personally had up to 5,000 elephants for use in battle, and that he used these to devastating effect against his enemies. Mughal elephants were not just 3 meters tall at the shoulder and weighing an average of 4.5 tons, but also were kitted out in specially made iron armor, covering the face, shoulders and sides, as well as some being armed with tusk scythes and being trained in using their trunks to literally rip men apart by the limbs. Akbar had a personal love for elephants and is depicted here training one at a young age. He also learned non-Indian styles of warfare, studying closely how the successful Ottoman and European, mostly Portuguese, conducted military engagements. To this end, he even attempted to reach an alliance with the King of Spain and Portugal at the time, Philip II, but these talks were never concluded. Internally, Akbar seemed to command an almost unprecedented amount of respect and devotion from his subjects, as some even started to worship him as a deity in court, with the emperor performing the Hindu notion of darshan, the revelation of a deity to its devotees so that they could worship him. Let's now take a look at administration. Akbar's aim was to further centralize his government, making it both more efficient and giving him more control over unruly officials. To this end, he created the Mansab system, a numerical ranking of all his higher officials from 10 through to 5,000 based on how much they pleased the emperor. Depending on their rank, these Mansabdars had to provide correlating amounts of cavalry. For example, by 1595, Akbar had 1,823 Mansabdars, who collectively were obliged to produce some 141,000 cavalrymen. To pay for the upkeep of these troops, Akbar granted the Mansabdar one or more jagir, the revenue collected from certain estates, each depending on the rank of the official and how many men he was expected to provide and maintain. In order to foot the bill for such an expansion of not just the army but also the bureaucracy, Akbar had his authorities survey every village and field in his new empire, and calculated the intersect of the most taxes the farmers of a particular region could pay without it affecting their productivity, thus giving him optimum income without overburdening the population. The genius of Akbar's new administration was that these Mansabdars were totally dependent on the emperor. Their jagirs were often exchanged to other Mansabdars, meaning that no one official could build a power base, and the Mansab system was based solely on merit and could not be bought into, as was possible in many European and Chinese bureaucracies at the time. Furthermore, upon the death of the Mansabdar, all his property reverted to the emperor, who would often ceremonially return some of these possessions to his high-ranking sons, providing yet more of an initiative to do Akbar's bidding. He systematized the provincial structure of the empire, appointing each with a governor, revenue supervisor, military commander, chief judge, and news writer, which once again helped to regulate his new lands, rotating these officials to different provinces every few years, just as he did with the Jagirs of his Mansabdars. With the vast amount of wealth flowing into his coffers, Akbar had the time and the money to experiment with the coinage, minting several floral and decorated coins, some promoting his famed tolerance and others bearing the Islamic Shahada, or declaration of faith. Even in the linguistic sphere, Akbar left his mark, proclaiming Persian to be the official language of his empire, rather than the Chagatai Turkic language of his forebears. By promoting Persian as the official imperial language, and not one of the plethora spoken by his diverse subjects, he endowed them somewhat equal status, and allowed all officials trained in the tongue to read and write for the other members of the government, no matter their background or location within the empire, and without needing an interpreter to do so. When Emperor Akbar died in 1605, he left the Mughal Empire bigger, richer, better organized, and more powerful than it had ever been, starting the classical period of their rule over the Indian subcontinent. By use of his integration into the local Hindu society through marriages with Rajput brides and the incorporation of their fathers and brothers as his allies, he was able to forge a truly Indian empire. His large army, possibly the largest in the world at his time, was able to intimidate his opponents from both outside his lands and those who plotted against him, facing execution by elephant trampling as a terrifying deterrent. These armies were levied and financed by a coherent administrative system of mansubs and a general swing towards centralization that further consolidated Akbar's rule. Building on the foundations laid by Akbar, his descendants would further expand the empire until it covered almost the entirety of the Indian subcontinent, the tales of its power and opulence spreading far beyond and amazing all who heard them.
The policies and practices mentioned in this video helped the Mughals consolidate their grip on North India, allowing for expansion further into the subcontinent. But it has been argued that Mughal emperors like Aurangzeb failed to continue in Akbar's footsteps of tolerance and integration, causing deep rifts within the empire, and ultimately uniting external enemies. By the mid-18th century, the storm clouds brewing over South India burst open in a monsoon of revolt, spearheaded by the Hindu Maratha Confederacy. Not before long, foreigners exploited the Mughal Empire's weakness, culminating in the sack of Delhi by Persian ruler Nader Shah, his victorious force carrying the famed peacock throne with them in 1739. As the Mughals continued on a downward spiral, control of the empire passed to the Afghan Emirate to the north, a force unlike any had encountered before.
Alright everyone, I really hope you've enjoyed this video about how the Mughals consolidated their power in India. So a massive thank you to Griffin from the Armchair Historian channel, who suggested that we do a collaboration on India. Now if you couldn't tell, I have actually been in India quite recently and took a few photos there and videos, so I'm hopefully going to have some vlogs up before too long, possibly on Vlogs and Clogs, and also some integrated in more structured videos here on this channel. Now as well, actually, with this video, I am going to be donating the ad revenue that I get from this video to some charities over in India. So if you could share this with your friends, then you're not only going to be helping my channel out and Griff's channel out, but also the people who actually live in these areas, because the poverty there is really quite shocking, although the architecture is absolutely stunning. Massive thank you to the Patreons for continuing to support me. I really hope you have enjoyed this. I've put a lot of extra work into this video, trying out some new styles and new things, so please let me know what you think in the comments section below, and give it a thumbs up if you did enjoy it. And if you didn't, or you have some suggestions how to make videos better, then please do let me know down below. So thank you for watching, I hope you all have a great day.